أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدة الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين ورحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع ذنوبنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا مولانا أبو القاسم محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس ويطهرهم تطهيرا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم وانطقني بالهدى وقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا صدق الله العظيم صلوات My mothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, Alhamdulillah, is our fourth lecture in the series we have titled Building Strong Muslim Families in a Changing World. Wisdom from Quran and Ahl Bayt to navigate modern family life. And yesterday we spent quite a bit of time. We were continuing with our metaphor of the airplane, the pilot who takes off, and although he encounters a lot of turbulence, he manages to land. Why? Because he has a plan, he has a manifesto, he has instruments that work. And so we said that, I gave the example, if the pilot actually doesn't know what's surrounding the aircraft, if he is not aware of the weather, it is going to be a very bumpy ride. And so we talked a lot about, what are some of the clouds, some of the storm clouds that are kind of gathering around our families. And even though we didn't create them, we are not to blame for them. Obviously, we have to be more intentional. In this, and as I was saying the story of the 4 women that we heard yesterday, in the past, even if we were not very intentional, if we just went with the flow, we just lived our lives, we just cooked our biryani as we saw, things kind of worked out because the atmosphere was not so toxic, right? Again, to come back to the flight of the airplane, if the weather's good, if the airplane is fine, if there are no clouds, then even a junior pilot can do the job. The stormier the skies, you need some level of intentionality. You can't doze off. You have to be on high alert, and you have to kind of polish your skills. Okay, so that was yesterday, and today we will be coming back to the verse that we started with, which is the verse that all of us are familiar with, which is the Shadi card verse, where Allah tells us that He has created from amongst us as spouses so that we may find tranquility in them. And then he goes on to say, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. He placed between you love and rahma. Now again, mawadda and rahma, we would just stick to the Arabic because, as we would see, it is not, they're not easy words to translate. Okay, and so some of us, and I get this question a lot, right? Today you only spoke to these people, so what about us? So yesterday some people came and said, well, what about us seniors? Okay, the thing is that we are talking about building families, and families impact everyone. We've been saying this actually throughout, right, from day one, that the family does not live in isolation. It is not only me, my husband, and my children. Whatever happens inside the home actually radiates outside. It's how we build other relationships, how we navigate life. Okay. So although we are talking about Muwaddah today, and it is from quote unquote the Shadi card verse, I guarantee you the things that we talk today, if we can apply them, all our relationships will improve. So whether or not we are married, whether we intend to be married, whether we were once married, if we have anybody in our lives who we are in relationship, inshallah, when we work on these things, our relationships will improve. Salawat. So the reason for starting with the couple, right? And we talked about, I mentioned it briefly the other day, but first of all, a marriage is the strongest link in the family. That is how it starts. That is how a family in Islam starts, is when two people get together and they get married. So there is also what psychologists call a spillover effect. In other words, the relationship between the spouses spills over into the rest of the family, into the parenting relationship. So when your relationship is good, you are much more likely, and I'm not just saying this, there's a lot of research to back this up, you will be better parents. Absolutely. Not only that, a lot of times couples think, well, we don't fight in front of the kids. Have you ever heard that? Oh, we don't fight it. We do it behind closed doors. And I said, let's not kid ourselves. Children are much smarter than we give them credit for. What I'm not saying is never fight. I'm not saying that, okay? It's really good to fight, by the way, and that's another conversation, okay? It's really bad not to speak to each other, but it's okay to fight. Here's the thing. It's okay for your children to see you disagree. By seeing you, they are creating a blueprint for their intimate relationships. The way conflict is handled, a lot of times, older couples will come and they say, well, our parents never argued. My mother was just so kind and my wife's kind of not like that. Okay. So the thing is that when your kids see you argue, it's okay. Whether or not your children are seeing you arguing, you need to follow good protocol in any case. It's not like you curse each other behind the bedroom door and think it's okay. No. Also, it turns out that what research has found, that when things are not okay between the spouse, like say, for example, abusive relationships, or when things are pretty tense, the children pick up on it even when they're not in the room, even when they are asleep. That's why an abusive relationship, for example, is such a red flag for therapists. It's really something that we need to work on, and many therapists actually won't even see families where there is such kind of behavior, okay? Also, as we will see today, Muwaddah, comes, it's the same root word of al-wadud. You all know the word al-wadud, the ever-loving, the ever-manifesting of love, which is one of the names of God, right? So when, it is, He gave us this gift of Muwaddah between us when we got married. It was, so many times, I don't know about you, but do you make lists of wedding gifts that you get so that you can thank people, right? Have you ever written on top Muwaddah, Rahma, gifts from God? It's really important to become intentional about these things. This is, and remember we said that this gift is not given, like if it was an apple, they're given in terms of seeds. It's not given in terms of a ready-made fruit tree, right? Now, the word Muwaddah, now in Arabic, there are many, many words for love. In fact, by some estimates, 12 words for love. Hope, for example, is a love that is in the heart. Ishq, we all know, is an Urdu word too, which is the love that is passionate, that makes you fall head over heels with someone, that you lose your senses, your balance, all of that. Okay? Mawadda is a different kind of love. It is a love that cares. It is a love that is intentional. It is a love that manifests itself. You cannot have you cannot have mawadda in your heart. Mawadda shows through actions of love. And this is really important. For those of us, who believe that, oh, I said I love you, didn't I, the day we got married? You should know, even if we tell our kids that, it's not enough. Mawadda is the love that expresses itself. Very interestingly, Allah says, He didn't say, I placed mawadda in you. He says, I placed mawadda bainakum, between the two of you. Now, it is really beautiful because when I was studying psychology, there was this therapist, this couples therapist, who had come up with this really unique, so to say, perspective, which was that there is something called the relational space. There is energy between you and me. Okay? And that energy doesn't live in you, it doesn't live in me, it lives between the two of us. And it's actually a really beautiful concept because if once I started studying this, I became really like, even if you're just sitting together, you're just sitting with your kids, you're sitting with your spouse, you're sitting with someone you love, become aware of that relational energy. That is what Allah has placed between you two. It is the same kind of idea. It is the idea that the space between you and me carries the Spirit of God. It is this gift of God that He has granted us to make our family succeed. So now, we've all heard of love as a feeling, right? Falling in love, and it is so beautiful, and you can't focus on anything. And in Urdu, we have a saying, "Din mein bhi tare nazar aate hain." In other words, even in the middle of the day, you can see stars because you're so starstruck. Now, interestingly, what psychologists find that kind of love is not really love, it is what is called limerence or infatuation. And it has about a lifespan of 2 years maximum, between 6 months to 2 years. Okay. Now, what happens after 2 years or 6 months or any time in between? These days we are on the turbo track. Okay, so everything moves faster. So I don't know how long it takes these days, but imagine best case scenario. What happens? Reality hits. Suddenly, the stars are not. You're not seeing the stars, you're only seeing these stormy clouds, and you're seeing this very annoying person sitting next to you. Okay. So what happened? Did the love just magically disappear? So, when I was training, I remember one of the trainers saying, just remember, people don't fall out of love like monkeys fall out of trees. Right? That's not what happens. What happens is that love as a feeling, as a limerence, as an infatuation has faded, as it must. Can you imagine doing anything if that feeling was still there? We wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Like I know I was so distracted, like I got engaged while I was still in university. My grades crashed. They really did. Like I graduated, alhamdulillah, but so thank God that did not continue, But here's the thing, that love is not only a feeling. Feelings come and go. Mawadda is intentional love. It is love that is actions of love. And what psychologists know now is that when people are in a low space in their marriage, what I call a challenging season in your relationship, with whoever it's with, okay? Imagine it's with a sibling or a parent or a child, whoever. What has actually happened is that they have stopped doing the things that they used to when things were good. Think about it, okay? So if you were in a good season of life, you would give people the benefit of the doubt, you would go out with them, you would spend fun time with them, you would laugh, you would joke. When things become challenging and tough, you stop doing those things. And what happens is that it's like a vicious cycle. The less loving actions you do, the less loving feelings you have, and the worse you feel. The worse you feel, the less you do. Can you see that? Now, interestingly, you can also have a virtuous cycle. What is a virtuous cycle? We've all heard of vicious cycle, right? When the things go down, the negative cycle. But here's the thing, there is a virtuous cycle. Now, virtuous cycle is where it takes discipline, it takes commitment, it actually takes some level of recognizing that my relationship needs tending day in and day out, regardless of how I feel. I will not stop doing loving actions if I am not feeling up to it. Can you imagine how our relationships would change? And it turns out, many of you may have heard me say this, we have what is called masters of relationships and disasters of relationships. Okay? Disasters of relationships hold their relationship hostage. Well, how they think is, unless this problem in my life is solved, obviously I can't go on date nights. Unless this problem is solved, and obviously I can't be grateful. Unless this problem is solved, I can't be loving to my children. Right? That is really being subject to the whims of feeling. The masters of relationship, it turns out, have no less problems in their life. The people who make it long-term happy relationships have just as many problems, it turns out, as unhappy couples do. It's just that they have a different mindset to what they're going to do. Now, please, I am not minimizing any problem. I'm not saying don't work at the problems. Absolutely. That's a whole different conversation, right? And again, what research shows, it's literally, think about it. People say, oh, my relationship is terrible. Where do I even start? It's a disaster. And forget about the history. Literally just think about the next time you are going to be with that person, whoever in the world it is. The next time you're going to be with that person, and make that interaction a positive one. Just that. We can do that, right? No matter how bad things are, we can focus on the next interaction. And it turns out that the research shows exactly the same thing, that couples who interact about 5 times positively to 1 time negatively have really strong relationships. Some of you may have heard me talk about the emotional bank account, right? And one of the very key aspects of this bank account is appreciation. Appreciation, right? We could, I don't know if we'll have time today, but we could really spend hours talking about how important this is. One of the barriers to appreciation is that we think this is their responsibility. They're doing so little. This is the least they can do, right? This is the least they can do. And here's the thing with that mindset, honestly, as therapists, we're not there to judge. Like, who's right, who's wrong. Really, in the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is, where do you want your relationship to go? If you want your relationship to become positive, the thing is, the more appreciation you show, whichever relationship it is, right? Husband, parent, child, sibling, whoever it is, you show them appreciation, it will be a huge deposit in the bank account. What you show appreciation for, you're likely to see more of. You could, if you, for example, if you said, well, this is the minimum, if my parents are like, if my children are calling me once a week, that's the minimum they can do. I mean, come on. You'll be right. You will be right. Will your relationship improve? No, it won't. So there's another very beautiful verse actually in the Quran, which we don't hear very often. It's from chapter 19 and it's verse 96, which says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna lazina amanu wa amilu salihat. So those are the people who believe and do good. Sayyaj'alu lahum rahmanu wudda. For them will Allah bring about love. So beautiful, right? So normally we think if you do Iman and Amalu Salihat, this is something that is paired so often in the Quran, right? That if you have Iman and Amalu Salihat, obviously you get closer to Allah, you will get Sawab, all of this will happen, it's the foundation of faith. What Allah is telling us, He will again, Ja'ala bainakum. It is He who will bring about love. Now, love to whom? So, what Mufassirin tell us is that love, obviously, Allah will love them because you're doing Iman and Amal Salihat, that's the path to God, but also people will love them. It will improve your relationships. And again, if you look at it from a very modern lens, okay, sitting here, what does that mean? It means that if you have faith, faith means principles. If you live your life by means of principles, and one of your principles is to, for example, speak kindly to everyone, and you do actions of that, actions of kindness all the time, would not people love you? It makes sense, right? So Allah is telling us that it is also divine intervention. You know, one of the things we need to remember, and we talk much more about this in parenting, that no matter what we do, we are little cogs in the wheel. We can do our very best in every situation in our lives, and our life can be disastrously wrong. That's the honest truth. Right? There are many forces, like we said, there are many clouds outside the plane, which have nothing to do with how we're not responsible for the cosmos, I was going to say, but we do have a role to play in it. That's another conversation, okay? So it is in the end, it is Him who gives us these divine blessings. And if they're withheld, so for example, I do everything right, and I am not getting the results, right? This does not mean anything except that you are being tested by that. And again, we come back to the principle. We come back to Amanu and Amalu Salihat. What is in my circle of control? What is the principle I can follow? And what are the actions that I can do? Okay. So how do we grow this love? Okay, that's the question we're going to ask. All of us have heard of the love languages by now. Anyone here not familiar with what love languages are? It's become like a sensation, right? Love languages. Turns out no research base whatsoever, but it seems to work, right? People, you do kind of thing with it. But so today we're going to talk about some Islamic love languages. What does the Quran tell us? What are some of the ways that we can grow this love between human beings? Now, if you're into reading and if you're into reading about these things, I would highly recommend a book called Love 2.0. It's by a positive psychology researcher named Barbara Fredrickson. She literally, it's very, these days, it's quite uncommon to have a revolutionary idea. And her idea was actually revolutionary. What she said is that love actually can be grown between any two people, strangers or best friends or intimate relationships, anyone. The way she defines love is she says it's a moment of positivity resonance between two people. In other words, it is sharing a pleasant moment between two people. And of course, there's a lot of research that she did behind it, because what she showed was that your whole nervous system, your blood pressure, your heart rate, everything kind of gets a bonus with these interactions. Now, of course, this also applies to anyone we see. If we share a pleasant moment with anyone, it has the same impact, right? So what the bad news about this, what she says, is that these moments are actually very fragile. So if I have a really pleasant exchange with you, and I go home and we come back tomorrow, we're back to square one, kind of. Like you may have a memory and I've built, we've deposited in each other's emotional bank account. But when you live with somebody, these moments are very fragile. The good news is it doesn't take much. All it takes is those moments of positive interactions with people. So, and this is my next point, right? The first kind of love language in Islam for any relationship is what we call cheerfulness and having a positive attitude. Why? Because Imam Ali alayhi salam says, the cause of love is cheerfulness. And the Prophet ﷺ said, good temper is a path to heaven. Cheering up family, if you spend time cheering up family, an angel prays forgiveness to you till judgment. How beautiful is this, right? So, those of us who struggle to be Miss Sunshine, okay, but here's the thing. Yes, life can be very hard. It can. There are many things. And this is not about, by the way, acting. It's not about, I'm feeling miserable and crotchety and here's Miss Sunshine. No, people catch up to it, right? But it is about recognizing, and we come back to the same thing. When mama's not happy, nobody's happy. It turns out that there is a name for this, and it is called emotional contagion. Emotional contagion. What that means is that, like a virus, our emotions are catchy. Like we catch each other's emotions. So notice that, if you walk into a room smiling, people will generally smile back. In fact, with children, and we've all experienced, those of us who have kids, do you remember? Even if you think that you are not showing your emotion and you're worried or something, your child will come and open your eyes and say, my mama sad, and they will make you want to smile. We've all experienced that, right? So, when you smile, if I see you smile, right? The neurons in my brain think that I am having a positive emotion. And automatically, I want to smile too. So remember now, coming back to the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ said, that smiling is sadaqah. That, making somebody happy, like literally being Little Miss Sunshine. I don't know what else to call it. Okay? It has a lot of spiritual benefits as well. And the other thing is true as well, that when you are negative Nancy, your family will also catch that. Now, here's the thing. What if you have real reasons, okay, and you don't feel like smiling, okay? The thing is, say if it's an off day, you wake up and, you've been to the therapist and the therapist told you, give yourself permission to be miserable. Okay. Absolutely okay. Instead of just taking it out on your family, actually announce it. Say, you know what, I'm negative Nancy today, just watch out and stay away. Really? Don't you, honestly, our kids will bless us, right? Because they have fair warning. I remember when we used to have entertain at home, I would just announce in the morning, no one is going to the hospital today. There'll be no broken bones, nothing. I just don't have time for it. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. Just give people fair warning and then take the time that you need. If it is more than a day or two or a season, if you're grieving, right? I mean, these days, the only time I cry is when I'm on the phone with all my kids. I just bawl the whole time because I need to let it out and I'm still grieving and they get it, right? But if it's chronic, we are not doing anyone any favors. There is help available. You don't have to suffer alone. Okay. So we need to look after our own well-being because when mama's not happy, nobody is happy, right? The second thing, so practical that our thing tells us, personal hygiene and grooming. Why do I even bring this up? Because I'm about you. I remember when I was growing up, when my dad was about to come home, mom would go into the dressing room, like change, like put on perfume, lipstick, like she would dress up. I was like, what's wrong? Who's coming over? And every day she would tell me, your dad, that's who's coming home. And I don't know how many of us do that anymore because we're so busy and we're like smelling of onions and it's not nice. It's not nice. So make a little bit of an effort. In order to keep the physical spark alive, we need to make a little bit of an effort. Okay? Turns out this effort is both ways. So, one thing, like you'll never hear me talk about what men should do. And there's a reason for that. The thing is that I don't like to tell women what men should do. Why? Because I don't want it to be used as a fight. Because believe me, I've had phone calls. Sister Marzia Hassan said this. No, these are not meant to further damage your relationship. So please do not use these out of context. Okay? What I'm telling you is that our religion is so balanced. There's an amazing narration that I came across where the Prophet said, obligatory to provide, like to be pleasant and not appear unpleasant to spouse. And when Imam Ali was asked why he dyes his hair, he said, do you like to see your wife untidy? You owe her the same. You owe her the same. And one of the things that just blew my mind was that actually Imam Ali explains it to someone that the reason why there was a Kabila or whatever, their women were unchaste is because the men did not look after their personal grooming. How modern and amazing is that? Okay. So again, we are told it's a mutual expectation. Both people have to do this, but who are we in control of? Not them, right? Us. You can, of course, I don't even want to say gently, because anyway. Then there's so many, I'm running out of time, so what am I going to focus on? Physical affection. So much written on physical affection. These days, what gets most of our affection? What do we touch most? Yes. Yes. Absolutely zero barakah. Zero barakah. I have not seen a single hadith that touching your phone is going to do anything for your relationship. Sorry. Turns out, when you touch your husband, when they hold each other's hands, their sins fall off from between their fingers. Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that everything that feels good and is good for a relationship turns out is an act of ibadah. How beautiful is our religion? So again, what research shows is, a lot of times the physical spark fades, right? And there are some theorists who used to say that, of course, passion is peaks at the beginning and then it's all downhill from there, okay? Thankfully, that view has changed. And because it doesn't actually align at all with, religious cultures or collectivist cultures or any, it turns out, and this is something that we really do need to know, that desire is something that needs work. Some people, like we think, oh, when we have desire is when we have physical intimacy. It turns out for many people it's the opposite. When they make physical intimacy a priority in their lives, desire is kept alive. This is something we need to know. Just touching another human being, we all know this, whether it is, and when people don't live with humans, they have animals, right, which do the same kind of things, because your nervous system gets regulated when you touch another human being. whether it is a friend, or like in our culture, we have so much of touching, right? In like after Salatul Jummah, after every Salah, and all of this has much barakah for us. In terms of spouses, what John Gottman says, minimum, every day, a 6-second kiss. 6 seconds kiss. Now it sounds, yeah, try it. It feels like an eternity if you're not used to it. If you're just used to, giving each other a peck on the lips, it actually feels like a thing. But it actually syncs your nervous system, your emotions to one another. You act as a co-regulator to each other. 20 seconds of hugs. This can be with anyone, right? Whether with kids or whatever. Like these days, we're all so much in a rush. But when you hug somebody, like settle. Even when, and teenagers, we stop, like especially teenage boys, right? I always think it's like hugging a porcupine. Not pleasant a lot of times, especially if they've been playing and But here's the thing, that they need that. Everyone needs human touch. And even our teenagers, they need this, even though they may be fighting with us, for example. So what am I going to do? I think let's just talk about the minimum, okay? So in every home, we have what we call rituals, right? We have rituals, you wake up a certain way, you get ready for work, you go to work, you come back. And, in your daily rituals, there are 5 times which are really important for connection. And they're only moments, okay? But if you pay attention to these 5 moments of connection, your day and your entire family life is going to work much better. The first is when you wake up, right? What is the first thing you say to each other? Do you say salam or do you reach for your phone? Okay, good. Because there are many people who don't actually. I'm always amazed, right, when you're talking to people. When you are leaving the house for work, when you come back, the moment you come back. So imagine this. Okay, let's go back to Amina, okay, from yesterday. So Amina's married and now she has a little child and she is very stressed and she is on mat leave. She waits the entire day for her husband to come home so that she can get a break. Understandable, right? So the minute he comes in, she says, here's the kid, and she's off to shower, change, whatever. Now, this is very understandable. Like we've all been there, right? Here's the thing. If Amina can wait 5 minutes to greet her husband properly, if the husband leaves his stress on that trouble tree that we spoke about outside the door and walks in, if their first interaction of the evening is pleasant, the first 5 minutes, the chances are the rest of the evening will be pleasant. Do you know what I mean? Right. Does this happen automatically? No, it does not happen automatically because life will always be crazy and it will only get like sometimes we're like ships in the night, right? Just crossing each other, once leaving, once coming home. And here's the thing. If we want to be intentional about our family life, and if we truly want to, be okay once the kids are grown up and whatever, we need to pay attention to these little things. It's not a lot. If our daily schedule is such that it does not provide for these, something's got to change because we can't keep doing the same thing and then say it's not working, right? Mealtime. So mealtime is another one. A reward, eating together with your family, the Prophet tells us, is like freeing a slave or building a city in Jannah with every bite shared with the family. So when we tell ourselves, oh, I can't eat with the family because we all have different schedules. If you all have different schedules and you're not eating together, it will show. The cracks will appear. These are the little intentional things that we do to make a rock solid family over the long term. If you cannot possibly eat dinner together, eat breakfast together, eat one meal a day together. And then how you say goodnight to each other. What are, and please don't, this thing about don't go to bed angry and all of this nonsense. You absolutely should go to bed angry. Like, you don't have to solve every problem and every fight on every day. Please don't do that. It's not good for your relationship. At the end of the day, so what I am saying is, yes, you have problems. Yes, you're annoyed at each other, all of that. These things, what I'm talking about, the rituals of daily connection, are sacred. They should not depend on how the other person has behaved. It should not depend on whether or not you're in a good mood or, had a fight or whatever. They have to be sacred because this is what will keep you through the hard times. There will be times when you hate each other. It's documented. It's a term called marital hate. It happens. It's not the end of the world. But you get annoyed at each other. That's fine. But don't stop eating together. Don't stop saying salam to each other. Okay. What are we saying, right? Basically, that Muwaddah is a gift from God, and keeping it alive is ibadah. It's part of our faith. There are, so many benefits that Allah tells us, regardless of what science is telling us, all of that. Okay? One of the biggest examples of this, of course, we come back to Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says that when I looked at Fatima, all my grief was gone. And we know he had a very hard life, right? This is a couple who had kept Muwaddah and Rahma and Sukoon alive